So it's not the first time for you in Germany. You worked for a while in Berlin. Are friends from Berlin?
Kim?
Yeah.
Melanie, Santiago.
Melanie, Santiago, hello. And you took part in the Documenta in Kassel last year. And could you please tell us a bit about your Documenta work?
Yes, the project was a series of interventions in the street where in the different streets of Kassel that I arrived to know very well because I used no public transportation the almost 2 months that I spent there. So it was only walking, trying to devise an educational thing for myself. So to understand and to learn from the city where Documenta happens. So instead of having my work existing in the rooms of the museums or the places where it normally happens, including the park, I decided to do it in the places where much more people can see it, which is in the ordinary places outside the bakery or in the bar or in the pharmacy, and using the public space in a more generous way for myself. And so all these works were there, they were left in the public space, and I hope some people from the art audience could see it, but maybe they didn't know. And so many people said that it was a group of invisible works, but in fact they were much more visible than the other works in the exhibition, as they were seen not only by the public of art, but also by other people, dogs, myself, trees, plants, chewing gums just dropped there, pieces of wire, stones, grass, insects, and the sky. So it was really nice and beautiful for me to understand the city and also myself in a different context, as I do every time and everywhere I go, as it's happening here, even when I spend the whole time in the museum.
Abraham, you told us you did, during your stay in Munich, another, quote, invisible work in Munich.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I did a couple of sculptures with found material, as I did in Kassel, like using only the materials that were in the place where I made them. And I was very happy to know that the place where I'm staying with Alejandra and Anna, my wife and my daughter, is just around the corner from the place where Rainer Wender Fassbinder used to hang around with his friends to create the amphitheater in between Türkenstrasse and Amalienstrasse. So in this passage, it was the beginning of something. I would say the beginning of the transformation of language, which is something I like very much. And then I went there to the two ends of the passage in the two streets to make a little sculpture there at the end of each this passage, and so to make a bridge in between. That is, let's say, my emotion for being here in the city of Fassbinder.
Where have you seen your first Fassbinder film?
Well, I remember going to the cinema in the National University. There was a cine club called Cook, a cine club of the university. It was run by the monks, the Dominican monks, and they had a beautiful program, including the strangest things that you can imagine. When I was still a kid, I was a teenager, and my father took us, my siblings and me, to watch all these movies by Pasolini and Fassbinder and Herzog and Vajda, and all very strange things that I remember hating my father, like thinking, why is he bringing us to see all these so strange, the strangest things, like the devil as the good one, and like the mother as the worst one, and the friends as your worst enemies. And so it was a very, very intensive learning, let's say, from my father in terms of falling in love with cinema.
Okay, we talked about the...
And it was, sorry, it was Fox and His Friends by Fassbinder, the first one I saw. I don't know the name in German, but it's the story of a guy who wins the lottery, and then he spends all the money with bad friends, let's say. His best friends become his worst enemies. And he's a fantastic guy with a jean jacket with his name on it, with the pins, you know, like it says Fox.
Kennt jemand den deutschen Titel? Ja.
Fox und his Freunde.
Ja. Ja. So the visible part of Abraham Cruzvillegas, let's talk about your exhibition, Autoconstrucción. So the exhibition is focusing on a number of works from the last 10 years that all refer to this concept of Autoconstrucción. This term is you can find it in the it's the title of a book, a manual how to build houses without help of an architect. Can you explain the different layers of the title?
Yes. Well, this is the concept I've been using in the recent years for every project I did, and it refers, of course, to what you said, that it's like a way of constructing houses by the people who inhabit them. So it's not like someone who buys an apartment in a new building or an old building or a house that is already made, but it's people who make their own houses as they can, without money and without ideas properly, let's say architectonic ideas or education. So they do things as they can. And as they can in terms of not only of the skills or the technical issues, but also about the economic surrounding and the environment of an unfair distribution of wealth. This would be the case of my parents who arrived to Mexico City in the mid-1960s to occupy a piece of land in the south of Mexico that is volcanic rock land. And along with many other people from the countryside, they started making their houses with volcanic rock originally, but also combining with other elements that they recycled from other neighborhoods, like discarded wood or construction planks or things that were used once and then discarded. So they were making us something like an assemblage, but of course they didn't use the word, but it was something like that. And they also, in this process, they also constructed something that is not only a formal shape in the space as a physical house, but also a very strong social tissue, which is it's something that we were discussing last night. That is, I mean, in a different way, but it's that there is no concept of labor in this way of working and constructing, because there is properly, you cannot say there are workers, because it's only friends and relatives and neighbors. So it's more like an economic system based in solidarity. So it's a warm process in which there are no fees and no money in between. And maybe it's more about exchanging in terms of emotional and affective links. So this became a very strong community in which I grew up. And never, as I remember, we never used the word poverty or talking about us as poor people. We felt we were very rich because of solidarity and because of all the ingenuity on approaching materials in a different way. That means, of course, the politics of recycling, but not in the global trend situation, but just based in scarcity and needs. So this is the very, very origin of my use of the concept autoconstrucción. But of course, and I would just make a synthesis in a different way, which is more philosophical. That means autoconstruction is the construction of the self. And this is more related to a spiritual way of understanding the identity as something that is definitely unfinished. And the houses in my neighborhood, as in many other places in the world that are part of these similar circumstances, are houses that are definitely unfinished as well, formally, physically. It's kind of the shape of hope, as they think they can still keep constructing forever as the situation of the family changes. So this is why I think of it not just as a metaphor of identity, but my identity itself.
There are, so since 2010 you are also working on self-portraits, assemblage sculptures, and we show one of these in our exhibition. It is called Autorretrato Jacarandoso con las manos ocupadas. Auf Deutsch, fröhliches Selbstporträt mit vollen Händen. Do you have an image?
I didn't find it, but it's in the show. In Spanish is Autorretrato Jacarandoso con las manos ocupadas, which is like a horny self-portrait. And I think like all these sculptures I make are they don't reflect myself, but they are myself. And I think of them, when they feel me making them, they go to different circumstances or states of the spirit. And I felt of this one especially that it became very horny as I was making it. And I felt very happy of this, and I just was, I got the disease of horniness, you know. And then, I don't know, like in other self-portraits, they are kind of sad, or they are worried, or they are with problems in the stomach, and so it's so sometimes I try to make their problems mine. And in terms of the discussion they have internally, because they are made with different materials, that produces sometimes economic clashes, political clashes, and then this is what I like of understanding their problems, and then I made them mine again.
So I noticed that circulation is important for your thinking. Can think, for example, there's one sculpture, Errores Universales.
I think I have a picture of this. Just let me see. And yeah, Errores Universales is maybe I lost it. Yeah, I think it's just... this is also in the show, Errores Universales, is this one. And this piece is, this is made of tire rubber. They recycle rubber from car tires to make shoe sandals, sorry. And then this is the kind of shoe I wear all the time in Mexico. And so I became very familiar to it. As I'm in contact, my skin is in contact with this material every day. And then I decided to make something with it in a kind of mimesis, I would say, using a concept you like very much, that is trying to reproduce the growth of leaves and other organic elements in nature. So making a sort of a spiral around an iron rod that should go infinitely, it could grow infinitely, but now here the height of the rooms is 6 meters more or less, so it's 6 meters high. So it changes every time it's exhibited in a new place. But yeah, like I like when you ask about circulation, because it can be used as a word with different meanings. Yeah. And this is one thing about kind of the series of Fibonacci, that is kind of a circulating demonstration of infinite, of nature, and yeah. And then, but it's also like a good use of the word, like myself circulating. And then I use these materials that I got in Oaxaca, in the southeast of Mexico, but I also use materials that come from Morocco or from Paris or from Berlin or from New York or wherever I can be. And then this also includes a different discussion about circulation and production of contemporary art now, as this, as I said before, is describing or making evidence of a clash of economies again, or different types of production. Like instead of using something like, let's say, brand new, using recycled materials is also important for me in terms of this kind of circulation of capital that is not only money. And then in other pieces that you might see here in the show, sorry, not this. This is in the show. Here, this is called Constitución. And in this, I use a combination of materials that is, first of all, unstable physically. It's, I don't think it's so good to have these lights like that. Sorry, for the screening, I mean. And it's a obsidian, crystal rock, and a bucket made out of tire rubber again. And this comes from Morocco, the bucket. And it's, I like the idea that it's showing us like so many layers of existence that you can see let's say the raw rock, like a brute, natural, that it's like as it came from the mine, and two different types of rock, like loaded symbolically with many, many meanings, I would say, at least obsidian. And then the bucket that is, it had like one life as prime matter before it was converted or transformed into rubber for industrially, I mean. And then it became a tire for a car, maybe Goodyear or Michelin or I don't know. And then it was transformed into a bucket for carrying water. And then it became a part of an artwork, but it can be used again as a bucket. I mean, there is no cancellation of these. And they are like totally unstable there. There is no glue or screws putting things together. So I like these, that these can collapse.
You are working with recycled material, with rocks, with vegetables. You will find a lot of vegetables in the exhibition. And yeah, let's talk about another material. Let's talk about shit.
Ah. You like shit. Yeah, me too. Well, this is funny because the day before yesterday, when I came to the museum, to the house, I just found this, that I thought it was similar to many artworks. And they...
improvised sculpture.
It's very improvised, and I liked it very much, and I took some pictures of it because I like it. And it means something, of course, also. I would say where it come from, and why here and then. And it happens that I use this material, not exactly this, but maybe from a different animal, and in different works. I was invited to Glasgow in 2008 by Francis McKee, who's an Irish curator based there. He's a historian of medicine, in fact, but he moved to contemporary art as discussing with artists about medicine and so. And I went to a residency in the countryside of Scotland to a place called Cove Park. And it's there where there is also a submarine bunker. You know, it's a very interesting strategic point for the UK. It was a military base, and then it was transformed to a conservation park, and now it's a residence for artists. But they still have the bunker for the submarines, nuclear submarines, I would say. And so I was there, and I came from Mexico, and it was interesting looking for materials. And there was almost nothing. So I started using the material that I found. And I found it very, very rich, loaded with meanings also, because of the history of the place and because of the possible transformation of dung in gold, alchemy. And I did it. This became my prime matter for the work I made there, one of the materials. And I was trying to make a democracy of the materials, treating them, all of them, as gold. And I made some sculptures that are here in the exhibition. And, well, this is the place where I made the exhibition at the end, but that's not so important. And recently, I made another project oh, it's not this, sorry. Oh, yeah. That is these little pieces that are heads. They are cast heads from, I made a mold from a shrunken head from Amazonas, the Amazon River in Ecuador and Brazil. It's, they are called zanzas, and they are originally from family fights. So they kept doing this as something part of their culture and their tradition. And suddenly, when British people arrived there, they took some as souvenirs of this culture and took them to a museum in Oxford called Pitt Rivers, where they have a collection of all kinds of things, Aztec, Egyptian, African, Amazonic, all together in one vitrine, or in many vitrines, I mean, but all mixed in one or in many vitrines, but not with no categories, with kind of flattening all exotic things. And I was very thrilled by this as a statement. And then I made a mold, and then I cast these heads that mimic the original one from the museum, but they are made of shit, of cows and horses from the common meadows of Oxford, which also means something. And then I made this game in which people was invited. They were invited to throw the heads from the center to outside, to this kind of field that I designed, and kind of a pétanque or similar game that like a game. But also I made another piece that is a collection of these heads that went to the museum there in Oxford. That is this. There's a mobile sculpture that hangs from the ceiling, and each piece of wood or each stick or pipe is a trajectory from one place to another in the city of Oxford, from the Pitt Rivers to the other museum, the Ashmolean, or it's not the Ashmolean, it's I don't remember now, but also the universities, the bars, the colleges, the churches, and so it's also a personal map of Oxford that these spots are marked with each head of dung. So this is, I have a constant relationship with shit, but different ways. It's just like it remembers me of many things that are not just like a leftover, let's say, an organic thing.
Can every sculpture be seen as a kind of self-portrait? So when this mobile includes a mind map or map of the places you visited in
exactly.
Oxford?
As I said, for this project I worked with Michael Stanley, and I walked the city many times, going from, let's say, from the bar where Tolkien supposedly wrote the Lord of the Rings to the Pitt Rivers, and then from the Christchurch College to the bar where Lewis Carroll supposedly wrote Alice, and so on. So it became a personal map of learning also from the city, but also learning what it means, like each of these places in history, starting with the Pitt Rivers itself. The show was at the Modern Art Oxford Museum, which also has a particular history or story. But so this is a personal approach, and there are some other pieces that are self-portraits like this, the white paper on the work. On the wall that is composed by little elements that I paint from my everyday life, like business cards or postcards or napkins or all kind of printed information, and I covered them with paint so nobody can see them. So that's why I call them blind self-portraits.
This is becoming almost invisible in the white cube. So
yeah.
I would like to ask you if you ever thought about the concept of mimesis.
Well, I have some personal, let's say, inner discussions about mimesis and representation, but also about abstraction as terms that are coined in Western culture. You know, like I think it's. I have this problem, let's say, like about using these concepts, and instead I prefer to change or to bend the conversation or my inner discussion to somewhere else in which these works, for instance, are based on the idea of that a paper is an object. So trying to make more evidence of this, adding layers of paint so they can go thicker, as maybe Eduardo Costa, the Argentinian artist, did or does, like making a volume out of layers and layers and layers of paint. And then this is one reference, of course, but there are many other references, like about to monochrome and so. But I don't like using the word abstraction as well, as I think it's also kind of a macho construction. And I prefer using some, let's say, escape from the idea of trying to represent, and I think better activating the very dynamics of what the identity could be, my own identity, and not trying to represent it. Mm-hmm. So that's it. And I understand why you asked me about mimesis, and we both love the old masters of painting, and we share common interest in that. But I think I'm not interested in mimesis in a literal way, I would say. Yeah, but maybe approaching it critically.
A common feature of your sculptures is that most of them are showing a fragile equilibrium. So everything can collapse. Mm-hmm. So of course, so in the exhibition you see objects and. But there are vegetables also changing the appearance during the exhibition period.
Yeah.
And how do you think about destruction? I know that you are also a great collage artist, and collage is about destroying papers. So the opposite of what you've done here.
Well, I think I have different comments. One is that about instability and I like to make my sculptures very unstable, like fragile or precarious. Let's say I like the word precarious because it means also something else, but this is a physical precarity, and then this is like it comes from a very intuitive playfulness, let's say, that I learned from making or constructing my parents' house with them when I was a child, and everything was about to collapse in that house, and that you quoted me, and then I remember my mother saying that, like asking my father to fix things in the house, like esta chingadera se va a caer, no? Like saying all the time, like fix it, because it's falling apart, and so this is very important for me, but something that is involuntary, and then I'm making this voluntarily, which is also something else. And on the other hand, I think it's the idea of the reason of autoconstruction as a historical reason in terms of why people abandon the countryside to live in the city, looking for a sort of a promise of a social, something better. But it went worse, in fact. And it was in the year where I was born, in 1968, that it marks the real collapse of the country. It's not just the things at home, but the whole situation, the politics, the economy. Since I remember, we still use the term permanent crisis. And then they started using different terms. I mean, the economists, that they like these inventing terms for calling poverty, like the president Vicente Fox talked about desaceleración económica instead of poverty, and things like that. So I like these as paradoxes of what I experienced. And then these sculptures are not just physically unstable, but also, let's say, conceptually. And being exhibited in a museum or any other institution, it includes, of course, many contradictions. And I like that also because of the possible collapse of its conceptual meaning, again, or purpose, if there is one. And about collage, I would say I love making collages, and I always made them, and I think of them as sculptures as well, like flat sculptures. And recently I started a new series, like almost 2 years ago. When I was in Kassel, I started making a new series of collages made with stickers, those that children use for, like Star Wars and Bob Esponja and Mickey Mouse and all of this, but along with the portrait of President Bush, and so that you can find, or I don't know, like making a landscape of contemporary world by using flat images that children deal with. So, yeah, I keep doing this as something maybe for myself, trying to find more ways of not getting bored.
Can you show this image again of the sculpture Constitución?
Right, sure. Let me find it now. Sorry.
It's a good example of precarious.
That's it.
Fragile.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. But there are also some others.
Equilibrium. Maybe. And so
this is one that that is made with a Chinese hat and a branch that I found in the street, and it's decorated with rubber bands that I keep finding in the streets. So it's these little things that mostly women use for holding their hair, or they use them also in the wrist, and they get lost, like gloves also sometimes, and you find them in the streets, like one glove and then one rubber band. So it's a kind of a continuous work that I like doing in time, that as I keep finding them. And it's also about labor, of course, and overproduction, as most of these objects are made in China, like these little rubber bands, as almost everything now is made in China. And but I also like using other objects that are unstable, different ways, like bottle beer cups that I still drink, let's say, and then every time I drink a beer, I keep the bottle cap, and I add it
every time,
almost every time, and then I keep them, and then I use them for making an infinite pile of beer bottle caps. So it's a lifetime sculpture. So I will just finish it when I die, or when I go up, stop drinking, like. So, but it's this kind of thing that it's kind of silent, but it's still there because it means also drinking with friends when you work or while you work. As I think it's also part of the Autoconstrucción dynamics, like constructing together, making projects together. For me, means having a beer together, and it's enjoying. So in fact, it's not like working properly again. It's more like sharing this time, and then it's like partying instead. And then this is the evidence of that, the beer bottle caps. So I like that. I think I can have a picture here. Let me see. Because I started it when I went to Jose Curi to Buenos Aires once, and I made the first beer bottle cap. No, it's not here, sorry. Anyways, yeah, that's it.
Some works have, for me, clearly political allusions, connotations, thinking of Constitución, Concordia. Can these sculptures be read as like emblems?
In a way, yes. I think there are different meanings also from the titles of the works. And let me show you some. I don't know if one, but anyways, like this one, maybe. This one is made with candlesticks that are made of fat, animal fat, and they are originally used maybe in Mexico for a kind of how do you say, like witchcraft, like asking something like I don't know if a god or a spirit for someone to fall in love with you, or someone who hates you to stop hating you, and etc. It has a tradition in time. It doesn't. It's in Mexico. There is lots of Santeria, for instance, and it has a genealogy. But it's very common in Mexico to go to the Sonora market to get these kind of little things that you can use for
to achieve good things favor. Only.
No, it depends, on you, on the person, I would say, yeah. But yeah, what I wanted to say is that the names, to be honest, some of these come from my favorite bars in Mexico City, but I also use them as let's say, a double meaning or a word game that can lead you to a different field of discussion instead of closing the discussion or the content to just one single meaning. So it opens and widens the possible understanding or interpretation of each work, and it becomes a different thing from what I wanted. And yeah, it's like also about the different processes of production of each object, each sculpture, and how they can have a dialogue or not in one single sculpture. But the title is also used for this kind of thing as creating conceptual instability. And so, yeah, this is another one that is in the exhibition that is made with a found ore and sickles. And so it's more, for me, it refers funnily to architecture, and this is something I normally don't deal with or don't like to talk about, but this work is more particularly about the idealization of a type of architecture that is not really transforming or affecting the people who inhabit the architecture, as it happened sometimes with specific types of modern architecture. And their collapse also came kind of faster, like in Tel Aviv, or I don't know.
Is it about failed
or Mexico
utopias?
City? Exactly. En fin, yeah, these are different types of works and titles that work together for finding their own way independently from me.